Now let's start seeing what we can do with the roar effect in Ableton Live 12. I'm going to add a little bit drive here to begin to send it to the saturation and the rest of this effect. And from here I can really start tweaking the sound. So with the drive, it goes into the tone amount, which is basically the low end or high end. It's kind of picking what frequencies to really focus in on and boosting those signals. Then that's going to go over into my first stage. Now here, I'm turning up the amount of wave shaping, and I can start tweaking the sound to get it just the way I want. And what's interesting here is when we start using the bias amount. The bias does this DC offset, and I like to think about it as really focusing on a specific part of this wave shaping of this sound, and I can use it to really gate the signal and do some really cool stuff, especially when I start adding feedback, which I'll show. You can also use the frequency setting here to cut off the sound and begin to shape the actual distortion and saturation that you're adding with this effect. Now, with all these settings in mind, let's start looking at feedback. So feedback is really cool. So feedback is the amount of this signal from this effect that we're sending back into itself. So if I increase this, I'm taking whatever harmonics I've added, putting it back through the effect, doing the effect again, and it can just get really weird sounds out of it. Now when we start playing with this bias amount, I can start really honing in on a specific part of this sound and start bringing out some strange qualities to it. It starts getting really weird and really fun. You can start hearing that kind of psytrance influence and really psychedelic type sounds you can make with the roar effect. Alright, so now let's get even stranger. And that's with the parallel processing. So over here we can, before we were just doing a single stage, it was going straight into the effect and out, but now we can separate it into 3 different stages. So in this case we have a low, medium, and high, and we have different effects for each one of those. I can affect the frequencies that are being affected in that stage, the amount of saturation or wave shaping, and so on. Then I can also look into this modulation section, and we have the matrix. Now whenever you click something, it shows up in the matrix, and then you can add an LFO amount, an envelope amount, and so on. Since I've mapped this LFO to a bunch of these different parameters, I can start making some weird sounds by speeding up and slowing it down. Now there's a lot more you can look into with this effect, but this gives you a taste of all that you can do with a simple beat using the roar effect.